time to go over some of the finer details.
Valley Girl was like totally for sure released on April 29th, 1983. It's my mom's birthday, by the way.
Nice.
At a budget of $350,000. That's it, $350,000, which is pretty impressive. Wow. I mean, what they did with $350,000 is, pretty impressive. Made $17.3 million. So, God. 17 million above the budget. So, definitely a hit. I mean, in terms of financial gains, I mean, there definitely were some movies that made more money, but $17.3 million on a $350,000 budget, that's pretty impressive. That's Blair Witch money.
That's enough to make any studio executive cream their pants.
Tubular.
It's directed by Martha Coolidge, who also directed Real Genius, which is one of my absolute favorite 80s movies, which is why I pointed out Michelle Mayrink. Is how you say her name?
Yeah.
In the starring, because she was kind of one of my early crushes in that movie. She's just a nerdy girl.
So Patrick's first crush.
Dirty, nerdy girl. Well, that and Dottie. From Pee-wee's Playhouse, who is also in this movie.
Oh, I thought you were talking about Deadfall.
She also directed Out to Sea, which was the second to last Walter Matthau, Jack Lemmon movie, which is one of those. It was a weird period where they did Odd Couple forever back in the 60s or the early 70s, I forget, but they reteamed 30 years later and did Grumpy Old Men, and then it was just kind of let's put them in every movie together for 7 or 8 years there. So they did Out to Sea and Grumpy Old Men, and they did The Odd Couple 2 and a bunch of other things. Odd Couple 2 was actually their final film, which is kind of fitting in a weird way. Before Walter Matthau died, I think Jack London. Wow.
I didn't realize he was in those movies.
Jack Lemmon died fairly quickly after. It's like when one part of the couple dies, the other one is soon to follow. She also did Material Girls with the Duff sisters, early 2000s, but she's mostly been doing TV, mostly guest director appearances on different things. She did an episode of Psych. She's done a bunch of other things. Written by Wayne Crawford and Andrew Lane, which I couldn't find anything that I recognized except they produced Night of the Comet. I don't know if you ever saw that movie. It's kind of almost like a comedy trauma film style of zombie apocalypse where a comet comes through and it causes people to turn into zombies. Yeah. It's an interesting 80s period piece.
Yeah.
As is this, of course.
Yeah.
Shot by Frederick Elmes, or Elmes, E-L-M-E-S. Elms.
Elm Street.
Elms.
Freddy Krueger.
Shot by Frederick Elmes, who is a frequent early collaborator with David Lynch. Worked on Eraserhead, Blue Velvet, which is possibly my favorite David Lynch movie, and Wild at Heart. So we'll be talking about him again. Nice. Also shot Ang Lee's Hulk.
Classic.
Which is, that happened. And then it has recently become the go-to for Jim Jarmusch, and ended up shooting Broken Flowers, which is probably my favorite Jim Jarmusch movie. With Bill Murray. Good one. But most recently, he shot The Jesus Rolls, which is that pseudo sequel spinoff to Big Lebowski, starring the Jesus that everybody hated across the board. It seems like, passion project that John Turturro had been trying to make for years. He'd been trying to get the rights to that character from the Coen brothers for years, and finally got it. And I think one review was like, he should have been left as just kind of a character you didn't know anything about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So surprising.
Yeah. I don't know if it recaptured the spirit. I haven't watched it. I don't know. Sometimes I don't really want to like sully the feeling of a movie that I really like, you know? Like,
same. That's why I haven't watched it.
Digging deeper into Jesus' story.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I think if the Coen brothers had done it, it would have been much,
of course, it would have been amazing. Yeah.
Obviously,
but they would never do that.
No. I think the studio even asked them, hey, would you guys want to spin off this character? And they said no.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think the Coens have ever done a sequel.
They just said 8-year-olds, dude, to the studio asking them.
No, seriously, dude.
Yeah, do we want to know about that character?
What's a
I actually
pederast,
want them to
Ethan?
do a sequel to it where he's just walking through the neighborhood door to door and that's it for 2 hours.
I would watch that. That'd be
I'd
fun.
watch that.
You did what?
You ate sand?
Edited.
No, Sam. His name was Sam.
Edited by Ava Gardos, who is still working today. Also directs nowadays, but I didn't recognize a single credit on her IMDb, which, you know, maybe I'm out of touch, but I'm sure there are some 80s kids who have followed her career, but I didn't really see anything that was something I had watched or even heard of. So, music by Mark Leventhal, who the only thing that I saw on there that I recognized was he collaborated with Green Jelly, which if anybody grew up in the 90s, Green Jelly was the band that did that Three Little Pigs song, Little Pig, let me in, which oddly enough was the first major studio appearance of Maynard James Keenan and Danny Carey from Tool.
Really?
Yeah, Maynard James Keenan is the guy saying, "Not by the hair on my chinny chin chin,"
That sounds on brand for him.
which is amazing. That's an amazing fun fact.
Wow, holy shit, that's funny.
And also Scott Wilk, who did the music for Duckman. If you ever watched that show,
I kind of feel like these guys had it easy since most of the music was licensed.
yeah. I mean, you know, $350,000, and they got "I'll Stop the World" and "Melt with You."
They had some of the biggest songs in the 80s in this movie.
Although I read
funny.
that the Men at Work song was added later. Like, it wasn't in the original cut
so it was
when he
paid
climbs
for
through
later.
the bathroom. Yeah, it must have been. They had the
Interesting.
rights to some other song and that fell through or something. I don't know. It was like the original theatrical had some different song, and then they replaced it with that.
Ratings, Rotten Tomatoes gave this an 83%, which is pretty high marks, though there's only 29 reviews. 6.9 out of 10, which is pretty good for, I don't know if I would quite give it that high, but I could see people liking it, especially in the 80s. This movie is very 80s, and then it has that kind of classic, you know, we'll talk about it in the quick facts, but it's the Romeo and Juliet, you know, star-crossed lovers, the outsiders, you know. But yeah, it's surprising. 83% gave it a 6 or above. Audience was 72%. This is about, I think it's about the same. I don't think they do the aggregate score on audience, so it's just kind of the across the board feel. Metacritic 66%, which, as we discussed in the last episode, was kind of like, you know, right in the middle, a little below like everybody giving it acclaim. IMDb is 6.4 out of 10, and it did not get a cinema score.
What?
So you would expect. I don't think cinema score was around in 83.
No.
Though there was
It feels
one
more like
movie, I feel
90s.
like Moonstruck got a cinema score. So they were around fairly early on. Quentin Tarantino and Kevin Smith both said that this is like their favorite rom-com of the 80s, which is kind of crazy. There's a lot of love for this movie.
I think it's a very nostalgic film. That's why for them.
Yeah,
like it's
I could
coming of
see that.
age. Kind of like I would imagine American Pie is for some folks in our age group. It's like that coming of age, teen comedy.
And it's got some raunchy moments. There's boobs. There's kind of like the girls talk about hand jobs and cum and all sorts of stuff at different times. And I think it's, if you're a kid in that time period, you're probably like, oh, finally something that talks like actual human beings do.
Yeah.
Which I'm sure that's what attracted Kevin Smith to it. Is like, his movies, he was like, I always see movies, but nobody talks like me and my friends. So I wanted to make a movie that, reflected how we actually speak to each other. And that's kind of what Valley Girl is, in a way.